I actually wanted to talk about like how TERFs are being made, how transphobic women are being made, how misogynistic women are being made and like boosted and platformed. Obviously, I've talked a lot about TERFs, the trans exclusionary radical feminists who are not actually feminists. They are foot soldiers of the patriarchy, and they want to essentially like enforce the worldview that like the patriarchy is pushing as well, that like if you're born male, you are stronger, you're superior, and you're going to be like the one in charge. And if you're born female, then you have to be subservient to men. You're going to be a victim of men. That's essentially what TERFs are pushing, right? With like the UK ruling reducing women to reproductive organs, their biological purpose, their biological role. I've talked a lot about this, but I haven't actually told why they hate trans women so much. And I think that I have accumulated enough, examples. And let's just start with the fact that trans women actually want to be women. And by want to be, it's, breaking free and living as their authentic self as women. We obviously have the quote-unquote male privilege, even though it's not entirely male privilege, because like we have been ostracized, right? We have been seen as lesser if we don't conform to like the toxic masculinity, if we don't live like that. For me, for instance, I've never really belonged with a lot of guys. I had people degrade me by calling me a girl, invalidate me by calling me a girl, right? Getting shamed for being, quote unquote feminine, because in this society, in this patriarchal society, femininity, anything that is like female, that is perceived to be for women, is inherently lesser, and you're losing your social status if you conform to that, right? Masculinity in that sense, like this toxic masculinity, is essentially you performing masculinity for other men. There is this mob mentality when it comes to guys and, toxic masculinity, and the world is becoming more and more misogynistic, so this makes it harder for men to do things that are needlessly gendered to be feminine or something, because then they're going to experience a lot of abuse as well. So growing up, for me, I never really had like this privilege of just being a guy and just fitting in, just doing what's right for me, because like I struggled with that and I was constantly invalidated. Even if I overperformed masculinity for them, I forced my voice deeper in order to experience less abuse, because actually when I was, 16, 17, a lot of people just thought when they heard my voice, I was a girl. Little did they know, but obviously, right, I thought that I need to be a man. I have to do this. And that obviously made it incredibly difficult for me to grow up as myself. When I started coming out, like the first thing I did was paint my nails. Shaving my legs and painting my nails. Those were like the first things I did. And it's like, oh yeah, this is like, so like these are gender stereotypes, and oh my god, you're reinforcing gender stereotypes. It is something that I wanted to do, not because I think that that is what I have to do in order to be a woman, but it's just what I wanted to do, and society wouldn't have allowed me to do this without consequences because of my, phenotype, because me going through like male puberty, right? It's not the same. Transphobes constantly use this as like a gotcha. You're actually the ones who are reinforcing gender stereotypes, which is like, no, it's just something that I wanted to do. Like, I don't know, me wearing leggings for the first time. I remember sitting in 5th grade and being like, I just want to wear this. They look comfy and they are pretty comfy. And I just want to be myself, not because that is expected of a woman, but because these are things that I actually wanted to do, and they happen to align with my gender identity. These stereotypes happen to align with my gender identity. It was the first time you had gender euphoria. It was more of a sense of like, I'm free, I'm liberated. I do not have to adhere to like the toxic masculinity anymore. I can just, if I like something, it doesn't matter if that's like in the men's section, if it's in the women's section, I can just get like a shampoo that I think smells nice. And that gave me a lot of joy. And TERFs are like, you haven't suffered in the right way. So what you're doing is actually making a mockery of women, because their concept of womanhood is just, I have been abused by the system, by my environment for being born female. When it comes to reproductive health, right? These are like the main things that TERFs throw at me when it comes to like, oh, you're not a woman because I have endometriosis and you'll never experience that. You will never understand what it's like to have like period cramps. There's also like this invalidation of like, you're not a woman because you don't meet beauty expectations of women. And it's not even just like TERFs, it's like cis women in general. A lot of cis white straight women do this form of othering to trans women, even if they are not down in this pipeline. But they're kind of like falling into it, or they're using a lot of rhetoric that is like going into it of like, we don't want to include you in this conversation when it comes to like women's rights and so on, because you don't know what it's like to have struggles with your reproductive health. You have to go through like a hysterectomy and get like invalidated by your doctors and so on, right? Like, trans women experience misogyny. We experience transphobia, which is rooted in misogyny. And a lot of cis women also experience transphobia if they do not meet societal expectations. When it comes to their voice, for instance, and they're being transvestigated and their hands are too big. A lot of things are happening in this sense. But they kind of use the fact that we do not have, you know, a female reproductive system in order to other us, and that is going into the mindset of like TERF rhetoric. And then there's also like this aspect of like, I just don't want you in our space, and if you want to be a woman, you should listen to women like me and not be like a man and talking over me, because like, how dare you think that your feelings are more important than mine? You're so male-brained. When it comes to how transphobic women talk about trans men, I hate that I was born female. You apparently hate that you were born female. And you hate being born female because of the society. So actually you're a victim, you're a confused little girl, and you just need to embrace your femininity and womanhood. It's like, I hate going through society as a woman. It would be so easier if I was a man. You must be doing that for the same reason as I do. You reject your femininity. You just gotta embrace your femininity. So a lot of, you know, TERF rhetoric is essentially just, I am a victim of abuse, and these trans women, they are, you know, part of the abusers, and they're taking away the suffering that allows me for me to claim the word woman. I have earned the label woman by going through all of the suffrage as a girl, and trans men are trying to escape this suffering by transitioning. It's in the sense of like, you know how men, how young boys are being taught that in order to be a man, they have to man up. They like emotions, they are gay, they are feminine, like don't cry. Men don't, like boys don't cry, men don't cry. Stop being such a little girl and like complaining all the time, right? You essentially have to numb yourself, and then you can earn the label man. It is not something that is given to you because of your phenotype. It is something that you have to earn. And if you don't meet societal expectations of, you know, a man or woman, then you will face consequences for that. The transphobia of J.K. Rowling will make a lot of sense if you understand this concept. J.K. Rowling doesn't go under Joanne Rowling. Even added the K, had to do like the J.K. in order to be perceived as a man, because female authors would never be successful. She needs that alias, she needs to pretend to be a man in order to be taken seriously, right? But these are like the things. It's like, I hate that I have to face the patriarchal shit that is happening. You know, I have to suffer, I have to endure all of these things. And now these men come along with their male privilege, and they think that they are as much of a victim as I am. If you remember the girl guiding situation, anti-trans groups wanted trans girls to be banned from the Girl Scouts. I'm being named in this article, by the way, because she responded to me. I made a video about this. I talked about this, right? I was like, serious question, who does this help? Literally excluding young girls from activities just because they are trans. This is only contributing to the mental health issues that trans people face. It is just viewing trans girls as predatory boys, as evil men. They are trying to invade these spaces and make all the girls uncomfortable because all of these girls, all of these young girls have been just as, you know, abused and are thus just as scared of anything male as them, so they have to protect them, right? And J.K. Rowling quote tweeted this with, answer, it helps girls. It tells girls they have the right to things of their own. It tells girls they have the right to say no. It reminds girls that the desires of boys do not supersede their feelings, their rights, the discomfort for their safety. You see how TERFs talk about not just, you know, trans girls, but also young boys. I saw this tweet on March 10th. It will forever be amazing to me that people with medical degrees got in front of a camera and said that the effects of puberty blockers on children and adolescents are fully reversible. The horror. Puberty blockers are just pausing the process of a child going through puberty. You will resume puberty once you stop taking them. Obviously, you shouldn't take them forever, but it's crazy to me how they still push this, that puberty blockers are like this harmful thing. Anyways, J.K. Rowling was like, and it will forever be appalling to me that a bunch of celebrities with influence over young people use their platform to amplify unevidenced claims for the benefit of transitioning minors while smearing those urging caution as bigots. It's crazy how the irony is lost on these people, on these ghouls. But yeah, obviously no offense to like the good ghouls. So I was like, you are a miserable, misogynistic woman who is envious because trans women actually want to live as women and are joyful in their womanhood. So you attack not just trans women, but all women with your patriarchal nonsense, right? Remember the boxer. Rosie Duffield, who is a sitting member of parliament in the UK, replied with, joyful in their womanhood is something no biological woman has ever said and meant ever. This is what I mean. They are miserable and they are proving my point. We actually break free from the system. We don't want to be numb and like disassociate. We are struggling with depression because we are forced to hide behind a mask and have to perform. And then we start transitioning, we break free from that, and things are getting better. We break free from the shackles, from the prison, and like society is so offended by this fact. But we still do it. No matter the roadblocks, we still push through because we actually know what is best for us and that this is a life that is actually worth living. And these women just hate being women. Obviously, please do not say that any misogynistic woman, any like TERF or so on, is like an egg, because a lot of them are just victims of abuse and they listen to their abusers because it's easier. They listen to the oppressors and they just want another group to punch down on and let their anger on. I wouldn't say that makes someone an egg. That is kind of like the TERF rhetoric of like, oh, I hate being born female, so like trans men actually don't exist because they are just being bullied out of their womanhood. I endure this suffering for society. Why do trans men try to like break free from that? Same thing, chain of abuse. Exactly. So please don't use like egg culture for this. Anyways, that is crazy to me. Rosie Duffield actually used to be a member of the Labour Party, left the Labour Party because they were like so evil or something, and now her entire identity, her entire personality revolves around making trans lives more miserable. I'ma be real, I did not expect to have a government account in my replies, but hey, TERFs do be like that, right? You remember like Nancy Mace going after Saber because Saber was like, oh, this is like my transitioning timeline, and Nancy Mace went out of her way with the government account and the private account to harass her. Politicians on Twitter going after trans women. It's crazy to me. Yeah, this is something that I wanted to talk about for a really long time. You know, a lot of the transphobia that they are pushing is also forcing a lot of cis women to adhere to gender expectations and have to perform for strangers because otherwise they might get transvestigated. I saw this video from Abigail, Virginia.
So I have a really deep voice as a female, and it's so funny because I get so many comments. Obviously, if you've read any of my comments, there's like, this girl is trans, you can see it in the hands, like she's a liar, like all these things. And I literally don't care. I don't know what it is, but it just feels fake to me. Like if you're trying to hurt my feelings, You're not going to do it by commenting mean things. But in person, for some reason, I'm like, wait, what? It feels more real. But it's so funny. One of my coworkers yesterday, we were out, and she was like, dude, one of my friends, one of the guys were like, yeah, like, she's so hot, but is she really like a girl? Like, I'm like, there's no way people really think that in real life, but maybe they do. Like, it literally doesn't register until someone in real life questions it. Y'all, come on. Really? Like, it actually shocks me, seriously. I have a deep voice, but so do other girls.
You know, when I talk about like voice dysphoria and so on, when I get like comments, when I get asked like, yo, boy or girl on Valorant, and I post this and I talk about this, I have so many transphobes be like, no real biological woman has ever been questioned if they are real women, because everybody knows who a real woman. And then I have a lot of my cis friends actually be like, hey, you know, I struggle with that too. I have like the same issues. It's so fascinating because a lot of transphobia is literally just regurgitating things and repurposing things that society already throws at cis women and also cis men. It is so fascinating when you like look at the things that they throw at you and then they deny that it's happening, right? Then they gaslight you to make you believe that this isn't happening. I actually have to check if this is on my other account, on my suspended account. As you might have noticed, I was tweeting on my main account. I was tweeting on my Nyara VT account. On March 11th, I actually have been set free on my main account. I no longer have a label on my account. So I'm no longer shadow banned. Things are no longer, you know, when I post graphics and so on, they are no longer being age restricted. This was like during time of me being like shadow banned, I was set free. First thing I got was a tweet with like 50,000 likes. So yeah. I'm able to tweet on my main account again, and I'm relieved because a lot of people ask me why am I still on Twitter. It just gives me the sense of like I'm doing something, because these things would have never happened on Blue Sky. You can you know, be on Blue Sky, be in your small little bubble, and you know, things you're a little bit separated from everything that's going on, which is, you know, useful. You're not enduring like all of the abuse, but this would have never happened on Blue Sky. It would have never been like quote tweeted by J.K. Rowling and so on. And it kind of gives me the impression that like, hey, I'm able to get my voice out there and actually reach more people, especially people in positions of power. So a while ago, on March 5th, this bigger TERF account who, you know, has also interacted with me before was like, Elon Musk's daughter could have had most anything she wanted in life. Instead, she chose to want the one thing she could never have, to become a woman. With a video attached of VGen absolutely slaying. And it's crazy to me that TERFs do not understand this. We are giving up a lot of things just to live as our authentic selves. Like I tweeted, yes, exactly, trans people sacrifice everything to live as their authentic selves. No amount of money, fame, admiration, power is worth hiding who you truly are. If you can't see how inspirational she is, then you're just a miserable, jealous, misogynistic freak, right? This would be a point of like, these women, these trans women give up their male privilege, their position as like a man, you know, they even give up like their family or wealth, careers and so on, just to live as women. Because this internal conflict is so difficult to ignore that even if they are like successful, they give this up because this internal conflict is not worth having to live hiding behind a mask all of your life. And cis people should look at this and be like, that is inspirational. Especially a lot of women who feel like they are lesser, they are worth nothing in this society, should look at trans women and be like, they give up everything just to be a woman and to have joy in living life as a woman. I don't know why they don't understand this. I don't know why it's so difficult for them to understand this. But I think it's jealousy. Maybe sunk cost fallacy. Maybe it's the fact that it's so much easier to abuse trans people than to push back against the patriarchy. That is what I wanted to talk about. This is why women are misogynistic. This is why women are transphobic. And this is why TERFs rather sacrifice their own bodily autonomy, their own rights, legislating their own rights away, funding all of like these insane laws, you know, these insane like Supreme Court rulings and so on, just because they rather stay in like this victim mentality and punch down on other groups than to go against their oppressors, right? It's on the same level as like Olympian Kaylee Humphries gives Trump an award for his impact on women's sports and standing up to keep biological women in women's sports. And then it's like, okay, now you have like sex testing. You gotta prove that you're a real woman. You have like genital inspections and so on. They rather suck up to their abusers than to go against them. And this needs to change. And trans people are such a fundamental component in this fight, which is why all of these capitalists, all of these people in positions of power, all of these fascists go against us. This is why they do all this. Because we are not only teaching women that, you know, men and women are equal and women are just as capable as men, that like the patriarchy is not a natural thing. It is something that is socially constructed. But we also tell that to cis men. And if you no longer can harm cis men,
like this. So the rat's like this.
The rat goes like this. Thank you. Thank you so much. If cis men no longer fall for like the patriarchal nonsense of like you have to perform masculinity for other men, you have to reject anything that society genders as feminine, even if it's something natural as you having emotions, you having feelings, you asking for help. If that is no longer a thing, then society can no longer gaslight you that women have it so much easier and you're so neglected by society and, you know, you're actually like worthless. Women need to be protected, but you can just be tossed aside. If they can no longer do this, then it makes it harder to turn young boys into misogynistic men, which is making everything fall apart for capitalists, for men in positions of power who profit from all of this culture war, from the gender wars. All of these things of like, oh, we need to push trans women out of sports because they are born male and they're inherently better at everything. Even in chess, they have such a huge advantage. If they play a video game, they have such a huge advantage. They shouldn't compete with women because that is unfair, because it's a man doing it. It's a male going up against the weak female. All of this is patriarchal nonsense. Obviously, you know, transitioning changes a lot of things when it comes to like muscle atrophy and so on, right? Like there are prerequisites that you need to fulfill in order to compete. But all of it rests on the idea that if you're a female, you're weak and you need a man to take care of you and submit so he can protect you. And things need to change. That's what I wanted to talk about. I think it's an incredibly important thing. It's helpful to know all of these things in order to understand where the transphobia is coming from, where a lot of the violence, a lot of the abuse that trans people need to endure, where this comes from, and why women are foot soldiers of the patriarchy. Anyways, I never expected a government official to respond to me, but actually, I kinda did. I just didn't know about this one.